Hi, welcome to the Ground Jewels. I'm James Dixon. We have been away for a little bit longer than we planned. We were hoping to come back in autumn with a new series. I apologise, that's been pushed to winter. But the important thing is we are back and we've got some fantastic guests coming up this season. We've got people talking about Vicarage Road, about Roots Hall, about Highfield Road, the old Coventry Stadium possibly, and then branching out beyond football into cricket with Edgbaston. And we're doing today, I'm very excited to say, our first NFL stadium. We're talking to the wonderful Charles Dagnall, the cricket broadcaster and Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, about the old Tampa Stadium. First, we've got news from around the grounds this week, and I think that we have to start with the most important piece of sports ground news this week, and that undoubtedly is Ronnie O'Sullivan calling the Alexandra Palace disgusting and dirty. I don't know, I quite like it. I know Ronnie O'Sullivan's a bit of a clean freak, and I get that with the OCD. I have a little tendency there myself. But it's, especially for the darts recently, Luke Littler, Luke Humphreys. I just love that venue. But that's his opinion. He's entitled to it, and it's part of his long-running feud with Matchroom. So take it in context. That's absolutely fine. We have big news coming out of Wales, South Wales particularly. The Ospreys are looking to move out of what is now known as the Swansea.com Stadium, I think more known to everybody as the Liberty Stadium, where the Swans, Swansea City play, and the Ospreys have played for most of their life as a rugby region. The new CEO, Lance Bradley, who's come from Gloucester, is saying that he's saying what everyone can see with their eyes is it's too big for them, and they're exploring other options. Whether that will be in the city of Swansea or further into the region, technically, if you're going back into the history there, that region also includes Neath. So are they going back to the Knoll? It's a great old historic rugby ground there that's still used. Yeah, be interesting to see what they do there. But the Ospreys are looking for a new smaller stadium, and in the other side, the other side of rugby over in England, Wasps are looking for a new, bigger stadium. So Wasps, 6 times Premiership champions, 2 times Heineken Cup winners, basically went out of business last year. They've led a nomadic existence for the past 30 or so years, first moving around various parts of London, then going to High Wycombe, then going to Coventry. Not a great period, and the relationship there between Wasps and Coventry Rugby Club's not great. Relationship between Coventry and the RFU, not great, consequently, for the RFU allowing that to happen. But Wasps are now looking to move to Kent. They've put in plans for a 28,000-seater stadium just off the M25. It's getting some local opposition, as you might imagine. Imaginatively titled environmental campaigns coming up with the Bees Not Wasps campaign. So we'll see where that goes. So Wasps could be on the move again. And all of that has happened in the last week. But we've got to get to our guest, Charles Dagnall. Now, I am a huge NFL nut. It is wildcard weekend as we are recording this. Tampa are hosting a playoff game against the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday night. But they're not going to be playing in the stadium that we discussed. They currently play in the Raymond James Stadium. But Charles Dagnall wanted to take us back to when he first became an NFL fan. And this is Charles talking about the Tampa Stadium. Joining us today is Charles Dagnall from, him from cricket, from Test Match Special, and from Sky Sports and various other places. Popped up on Channel 5 for the latest Cricket World Cup. But today he's going to be talking about NFL to start with. And he's going to be talking about his love of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we're going to discuss the Tampa Stadium. Charles, welcome to the Grand Jules.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here, all the way from India, as I am at the moment, where it's baking hot outside. And that's why I'm more than happy to be doing this podcast, so I don't have to sort of suffer the stifling heat and humidity for too much, because my fair skin cannot take it for too long. So yeah, it's lovely to be here.
But it's boiling here too. It's 7 degrees here, so it's pretty good for a British December. So, Charles, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yes.
How? Why?
Well, it's funny. Of all the grounds in the world that I've been to, obviously I'm very fortunate to do what I do and have a job that has kept me. I call it a job. It's not a job, really, isn't it? It's just a passion in the world of cricket. And I've managed to go to, there are special things. That's why I'm only too happy to do this podcast, in that they are, for me, special places. They really are. They're revered places, sports grounds. They are where some of your fondest memories occur, some of your most painful memories can occur there. But they are theatres, no matter how small. It could be, I don't know, you could be at a 200 or 300 seat non-league ground, or you could be at a vast MCG type of stadium of 100,000. But everywhere in between, they mean something to someone, and you get to see and witness amazing acts, great theatre, superhuman feats of what of what the body and the person and the talent can do. And so every time I walk up into nowadays into a press box, but when I was young, you'd walk up and you would see this the stairs, and when you're getting into the stands, and you would see this expanse of green usually, and it would just give you that fizz, that buzz, and that energy of what is awaiting you, what that anticipation of what's going to unfold before you, the storyline and the narrative. So they are fabulous places, and obviously with meaning to so many people. But as regards the Tampa Stadium, it's funny enough. We went on a family holiday, and this is how it all started. We went on a family holiday. We were very lucky. We got to go to Florida as a family, all 6 of us. And we would, and basically it was parents and 4 annoying children. Variety of ages. I was the youngest at 7, and my siblings were sort of 12, 13, 14 years old. And it was one of those where, mum and dad were trying to find things for us to do, kind of, So we went to Disney, and we went to this place called Busch Gardens, which was a theme park, and we were all loving it. It was amazing. Did some fabulous things. And then it was actually my mum that said she'd like to take us to see a game. Now, she's the least sporting person in the history of mankind. And we grew up in Bolton. So in the 80s, Burnden Park was the football stadium, which had half a supermarket at the away end, at the old Burnden Park. And it probably held 20,000, something like that. But it was a fairly dank and miserable and sort of, not soulless, that's not the right word. It was just sort of a bit bleak, considering it was, the north of England. It had the old sort of roofing, the sort of sheet roofing. And that was the biggest thing I'd ever seen. Now, I'm not a Bolton supporter, I'm a Burnley supporter, and I went to watch Burnley I went to Burnden Park before I actually went to Turf Moor. Excuse me. And so we went, so it was a fairly sort of horrid, usually when you went to a football ground, it was winter time, and it was the whole sort of grim up north type of feeling of Burnden Park. So she said, I'd like on this family holiday, is there a sports game we could go to? Because I loved my sport. The other 3 were musicians. They were sporting, but, I just watched sport left, right, and centre because it was something I could get into because I didn't play an instrument at that time and couldn't be involved because they were all older kids, all grouped together. They all played together, and I was kind of on my own a little bit. So it just so happened that it was pre-season in the NFL. Not that I knew this; I hadn't a clue. And there was a game on, and we actually got told about this by a guy in a shop. I can't remember what shop it was, and he said it might have even been in a bowling alley because we went bowling so many times in Florida. And he said, "Yeah, there's a game on at the weekend. Why don't you go along and hang a look?" Anyway, they got tickets and off we went. We drove in. My dad, he loved this. He had this idea of how he would be if he lived in America. He wanted the big town car. We had this Lincoln town car. This boat-sized machine. It was like an aircraft carrier that we were driving around in. So he loved it. He was just driving around and playing Boss Hog from the Dukes of Hazzard, basically. And he took us into Tampa, and then we just sort of parked up and walked to the stadium. Now, when you're 7, and the biggest thing you have ever seen is Burnden Park, and then you are walking towards a stadium which holds 76,000 people. It doesn't have a roof. It is this sort of oval, this velodrome type of shape. I'd never seen anything that wasn't square. You watch football on the telly back in the UK because we didn't have it on TV. The NFL on back at that time, not really. And we just saw square, very sort of traditional stands at pretty much every football ground. There wasn't really any sort of novelty towards them. They were all pretty similar, and they just varied in size. So we got. And I'm seeing this place from distance, and it looked big from distance. And at 7 years old, I'm going, "What is this place? What?" I just was. It just was mind-boggling the size. And we're striding ever closer towards it, and then you start to see the curves of each of the stands, and raising in the middle, and then just falling on the edges, and once again at each end. I'm just mesmerised by this venue that was just not like nothing I'd ever seen before. And I went, "This is cool." Also, it's at the back end of the summer in Florida, so it's around about 90 degrees. Who plays sport at 90-degree heat? It was just these things I wanted answers to these questions. So I'm sort of going towards this stadium. And there's a buzz. There's people, it's a pre-season game, so there's not as much buzz as there would have been, but I didn't know that at the time. So there's people tailgating, parked up with barbecues out the back of the car, and they're cooking their meats, and the smells are sort of wafting towards me as we walk up the drive. I just go, "What is this place?" And it was just astonishing. You didn't do that at the football.
No, I think as much as the stadium, that tailgating experience, which is very uniquely American, because of the vast car parks,
Yeah.
basically. Whereas you've got a lot of British football grounds were traditionally located in the centre of town, where
Yeah.
space was at a premium and all that kind of stuff. That tailgating experience is phenomenal. You describe it well as a velodrome. More fruitily, I think it was described by Chris Berman of ESPN as the Big Sombrero.
The Big Sombrero. That's right.
But it's a very unique looking stadium, and people will reckon, even if they don't feel like they know what it is, it's where Whitney Houston does the famous version of the Star Spangled Banner in
Yeah.
Super Bowl 25. That stand, get that massive stand going behind us, stretching up, looking like it's touching the sky. It's such an iconic look, and yeah, I can't imagine what it would be like going there at 7 years old.
It was just vast. I mean, the press boxes, I believe, that were put on specifically for that Super Bowl, I think. It didn't have them originally. It was just basically this big concrete bowl. And then they sort of added on, but they were there when I was there. And again, the floodlights were at the top of the press boxes, and they sort of or at the side of the ground rather than the traditional
Mm.
four corners of the ground. But this thing didn't have corners. I mean, what's going on? And as I mentioned, this the sort of wavy nature, the big sombreros, right? That's he did, didn't he, Chris Berman? And so then there were other things. So I'm seeing the tailgating and just going this. Well, people are just having a blast and music's blaring and people are cooking and all of this. And so we get in. And we get in, and all of the seats are on the inside. Now, that doesn't sound like anything. No, 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 no. They were in the concourses. The plastic seating were in the concourses of the stadium. Because of the heat and the temperature of Florida at that time, and not just for American football, but for other things, they were, it was a concrete bowl inside, and they had metal benches. And what you had to do was collect your seat from the concourse, take your seat up into the stands, and then attach them on these two metal hooks that would slide onto the metal bench. And that was your seat, because otherwise the seats would just be too hot and you would melt and burn yourself on the seat. And people were actually, there was cushions you could buy to stop yourself from getting leg burn if you went and got a beer from somewhere or something like that, or some food, and come back and your seat was meltingly hot again. It took that time. So again, this was an experience I'd never had. But then once more, and I cannot express how big. You can understand it nowadays because there are many more of them around, but. And the changing face of stadium structures within the UK. But I, when you're seven, and the space that you see and is available to America is that much more, and so these concourses were so wide with these orange chairs that were stacked so high, and there was obviously people there to provide you with them and the like. And so when you made that first step up into the stands. And we were sat on the side, we were probably around about, I don't know, the sort of 10, 20 yard line. I've got photos of me at that age with that little white hat on with my Buccaneers jersey, which they bought from a guy on the street. They weren't like official merchandise, they just wanted us to have the jersey. So, 10 quid jersey or whatever it was at the time. I wouldn't be able to tell you. But had the shirt on and with my legs dangling off the seat kind of thing. I'm just mesmerized by the whole thing. It took me a long time. All I was doing, I was silent. And for me at 7 years old, this was a big thing. But mum and dad said you were just silent. You're just taking it all in. You're just looking round at the vastness of the structure. And then, so immediately my mind went to, well, what goes on here to warrant this structure? Why would 70 odd thousand people come and watch this sport? What is this sport? And then you see other things that just don't register, or they register, but you don't understand because you've never seen them before. So there's a lot of fit women dancing on the side of what with pom poms. What are they doing here? This is a sports game. We're used to at 3 o'clock the football gets kicked, and at 4:45 you go home and you have a pie and a bovril at half time. That was what we were used to, but not pre-match entertainment. We were being entertained by the dancing girls and by music and bands and stuff like that. What's going on? And then they come out to warm up, and they're wearing these helmets with logos on the side of them. And even though it's such a routine we think about now, at 7 years old, we had no access to this game, which is played on the other side of the world that we have never played, or that we're not playing. Of course, at 7, I didn't know of any of the sport that was being played. So it was just a completely transcending experience for me, and that is when I got hooked. It was just I watched the game. I didn't know what was going on. We asked a couple of American people, and they were good enough because they're very welcoming like that. They want to introduce you to the sport, and they give you an indication of the basic structure of the rules. But I was hooked. That from the moment I walked into that stadium, I was absolutely hooked, and it has provided me with a 40-year love affair with the sport. Cricket's my job. Cricket's my job, and I absolutely adore it and have a passion for it. And I'm very lucky that it has given me a meaningful working life for the entirety of it. But I love the NFL. I love the NFL. It is a passion for me. And there's folk that know way more about it than me and delve into it. But I just adore it. I never miss Red Zone on a weekend. I never miss the subsequent primetime games. I have to watch it all. I send my daughter off to her room at 6 o'clock on a Sunday evening. She knows and she doesn't care anyway. She's 13 and she's more than happy to be out of my company. But it's one of those things where it has provided me with so much pleasure. Just that moment in that stadium. And I only went once. I remember so much about it because it was such a meaningful moment to me. And as soon as I got home from holiday, out came the books. Down to the library I went, I was going to say onto the internet, not in 1984, but it was books mainly that you would learn from, and then Channel 5 soon after, Channel 4, sorry, which was very early in its infancy and was sort of derided at the time as a television channel. That was one of the things that we got an hour of it, I think it was something like that with Nicky Horn, and that was the start for me. And from there on in, it has been just an absolute love affair. I adore the sport. I am ensconced by it and absorbed by it. And that ground and that stadium and that experience is the thing that I sort of go to. I do. I've had, and I'm lucky to have had so many experiences at some world-class venues and arenas around the world, and that is I'm so fortunate to have done that. But that is the ground that started my love affair with the NFL.
It's an amazing story, and it's one that shows the power of grounds. I mean, that game, I don't think we've touched on the result yet, but Tampa, I think I'm right, Tampa lost 52-21.
Do you know what?
But it doesn't matter.
It didn't matter.
It doesn't matter to you. It's about that experience of being and that community that forms, even if it's just for one Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and you can see the effect going through. How did you sort of sustain your? How did this go from being something that could have just been a fleeting holiday thing, which you look back on and go, wasn't that cool? That time we went there. A little holiday, instead of meeting some girl from Essex, in Tenerife, you met the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you've kept in touch with them. How does that sustain itself? And how do in terms of because we're not talking about Raymond James Stadium, which is not arguably, it's where the Bucks' modern stadium. It's where you've had the teams had their most success. They've won their only Super Bowl when they were playing in Raymond. For most of this period of time when they were at the Tampa Stadium, certainly from when you saw them up until that sort of 95 draft where the Bucks get really good when they draft Brooks and Sapp. They're a rubbish team.
Yes.
They really are.
How often I have wondered what my life might have been like had Mum and Dad taken us on holiday to, I don't know, LA or Boston or, somewhere which has had a far greater. I'm glad they didn't take us to New York, put it that way. If I was a Jets fan, I just don't, I wouldn't know what to think. But how did I sustain it? With great difficulty. Now, it just so happened that the first for the NFL actually was there on Channel 4. And don't get me wrong, there were lulls in that because of the amount of coverage we could get and the availability of it. It was very, very difficult. So I tried to sort of get as much information as I could whilst it was there. I think the moment that satellite television took over, and I'm trying to think now.
No, 95 Sky
90,
starts showing the
yeah,
NFL.
I'm just, yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, 95. The moment the satellite television took over, that's when, so I kept in touch with it without being avid at that age.
Mm.
It was because of the availability of it, really. It wasn't readily available. It got more so, but it wasn't hugely available. I'm just trying to think back in the late 80s and early 90s if they used to show a game. I think they did. I think they showed a game at maybe 6 o'clock. Memory, do you know what? My memory doesn't do me any favors. Be that as it may, when satellite television took over, that's where it really started being galvanized, and I started um, just getting into this routine, which hasn't changed in 30 years, of Sunday night being absolutely glued to the sofa with a me-shaped sort of cushion, bum print in the sofa for sitting there watching for 6 hours with food and drink being brought to me, if that was such a thing. Um, but but yeah, it was difficult to negotiate in these early years, and there were magazines that you could go to a specialist store in Manchester. I seem to remember near the Arndale Centre, I think it was, where you could, because I was allowed to ride the bus, a little bit later on, you take the number 12 to Manchester, and I wouldn't go specifically for the magazines, but when we went, pretty much, I would say once every week, once every 2 weeks, I'd ask my mum if we could go, or if I was on my own, I'd go to the store and pick up magazines like Sports Illustrated and things like that. And I think there was a magazine called First Down, a British publication that I used to sort of subscribe to as well. I think it was First Down, wasn't it? And so again, you'd get all of the information on the stats and the box scores and things like that, and you'd just study them and be sort of crude over it. And then you'd get the obvious derision from other people who didn't like the sport and didn't know about it, didn't understand it, and didn't have the same excitement about it that you did. So you'd have to wear a little bit of grief from either siblings or school friends because it wasn't football. Oh, well, they use their hands, and the things that we have heard for so long about the game for those who want to knock it. And you had to do that. That was part of a sort of rite of passage, if you like. But goodness, that's how I sort of maintained my support, if you like. Um, Knowing how kind of crap we were, because we were. So I was just wondering, thinking, are we ever going to be good? Ever? Have I just picked the worst team in history? But I sort of have a little. It's my own little rule where I only go and if there is a team I don't support in um a certain sport that I've never seen before, I will wait until I go and watch it, and I'll pick one of the two teams that are there, either the home
Mm.
side or the away side. So if I go to a college game, I've not been to a college game, believe it or not, and I'm desperate to. And when I turn up, it could be anyone. It could be Brigham Young, it could be Rutgers, it could be Syracuse or Maryland or Notre Dame or whoever it may be. Whenever I get to go to a college game, they will be that or their opposition will be one of the teams that I support. Similarly with baseball, I've not been to a baseball game, so I don't. But they don't interest me at the level college football does. But none of the other American sports interest me as much as the NFL. Maybe it's because of the childhood um, aspect to it and that sort of inner excitement. And now being a little bit older and wiser and more sort of downtrodden, I probably wouldn't get as excited. I'd still love to go. Don't get me wrong, but you know. my time is filled with cricket and American football. I don't know how much capacity I have to get into another sport.
It might affect your career a little bit
Yeah.
if you start taking on extra sports.
Mm.
You've got especially if you're quite impressionable, and then you're suddenly going to develop a new lifelong passion.
Well, the thing is that Sunday nights are taken care of anyway. So neither my girlfriend or my daughter get to see me on a Sunday night. They get to see my physical body. I'm there, but their attention they will have none of my attention whatsoever. I think they've made their peace with it. I think they don't understand it, but they know that's what I do. Similarly, when the cricket's on and I'm traveling around the country or like now traveling around the world, I am away for actually long periods of time from them. So when I'm kind of back, uh, not they probably don't want to see me, but I want to spend time with them away from sport and all of that. So if I, I think I would that wouldn't go down particularly well if I then just said, "Oh, I fancy getting into whatever it might be." And more of my time gets taken up in front of the television. So I don't think that would necessarily go down well.
Yeah, and college football is one of my huge passions. Later, a few weeks after this episode, we'll go out. We're going to be talking to someone who's a big Penn State
Right.
fan, and he's going to be talking about Beaver Stadium, and that's a 106,000
Crazy.
seat stadium, which is and that's their university level athletics, and for no one at Loughborough or Bath or wherever plays in front of more than a couple of hundred
Exactly.
people. And
Exactly.
but for, college football is, I would say, is an even better in person experience than NFL because of the bands, because of the tailgating scene, the student sections.
Oh,
It's more raucous, but it's not as good as a TV sport. It's slower. It's not it's fragmented for the different conferences, so the different
mm,
schedules. Whereas the NFL, you've got that centralizing force of the league office, which
absolutely.
makes sure that you get the good games at the right time, and that there's always some.
When you were saying about that, I'm
Yeah,
dying to go because you see, the one place I actually wanted to do. We were talking about holiday recently, myself and my girlfriend, and we wanted. I want to drive around because America fascinates me. It always has. For as bonkers as it can be, it just. I don't know. It just trips something in my mind that I love the place. I absolutely love it. It's got its problems, as has everywhere. It's got its problems. But I've found people every time I've been there, they are in the main wonderfully welcoming, wonderfully friendly. I don't care if they're putting it on. I really don't care. If they're smiling through gritted teeth and being nice to me, I couldn't care less. But generally speaking, they're lovely. And I wanted to drive around the southern states, sort of in a kind of Top Gear type of way. Just get a car, drive around the southern states, and go to the Mississippis and the Kentuckys and the Alabamas and the Georgias and the all of these Louisianas and stuff like that. So there is a temptation that I'll end up in Tennessee somewhere, which I know is a little bit more northern, but I fancy going to. Is it Neyland Stadium?
Tennessee, you don't just get tailgating, you get sailgating, where they party on the boats because it's next to a lake. So it's a
Yeah.
very unique experience, Tennessee. And they've got one of the great fight songs. I think it's an old Dolly Parton song, Rocky Top. And
Right.
it's a lovely country, and it's just
It looks sensational.
it is, and everyone wears orange. I mean, if you can get into your 7-year-old creamsicle Bucks
Yeah,
jersey,
I
you're
was
not. It might work as a Tennessee volunteer thing. So yeah, I think Tennessee's great. LSU's great. Texas is great as well. Both A&M and the
yeah,
University of. You can't go wrong in the South, basically.
yeah. I would love to do that, and that is on the bucket list to go and do a sort of holiday. I mean, I say recently, it was probably about 6, 7 years. I mean, it's not easy to get there given my schedule with work and at the time that the NFL is on that I'm usually working somewhere doing something, and that's just life. It happened. It so happened that I think it was, I want to say 2014, 2015 was actually my last trip over to the States to an NFL trip, if you like. And I went for a week and worked out the geography of, because I want to try and get to as many of the grounds as you can. I actually am not a massive fan of Raymond James. I've been once. And I don't know.
Did you not like the pirate ship?
I know it's where the Bucks. No, get rid of the ship. I think it's the naffest thing. I really do. I think it's so naff. And maybe I should cheer up a little bit, but I think it's so rubbish. Fire the cannons when we get a field goal, and oh no, just let the crowd do it. Anyway, be that as it may, I went on a holiday in, again. It would have been sort of 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, and I had to work out the fixtures just right. But I went for a week, went and based myself in Chicago. So went to Soldier Field on Thursday night football for Chicago versus Dallas. Then I had a choice on Sunday. Now, Saturday, strictly speaking, I could have gone to a college game. But I think at the time I went, it was sort of coming up towards the back end of their regular season. Tickets were at a premium. And the ones that I kind of wanted to, I just had no chance, basically. So I left it, and given I was driving as well on that Saturday, because I had the choice of either to go to Indianapolis or to Cleveland. So I went to Cleveland, and I went to not Indianapolis,
Cincinnati, maybe.
Cincinnati it would have been, because Cleveland were playing against Indianapolis. That's why it was in my head. So I went to Cleveland, and I went to the stadium there on the Sunday, drove back to Chicago after Sunday, and went to Lambeau Field for Monday Night Football.
That's pretty good.
And which was Green Bay versus Atlanta as it happened. And I mean, that experience was, so again, for any NFL fan, you'll know it. Going to Lambeau is absolutely at the top of the bucket list. And again, thrilling to go there and just sort of, again, experience the town, experience this basically this small sort of village of a town, and this gargantuan stadium locked onto the side of it.
I've done Lambeau, but I'm a long-suffering Chicago Bears fan. And so I grumpily did the Lambeau Field tour while wearing a Bears jersey. And pretended
special low,
pretended to be having a miserable time, but thinking, bloody hell, they do the history right, and the tour guide was fantastic, and it was just and they take you onto the field, and I'm like, God, this is really cool actually. But I'm there with my mates, and I'm like, no, I'm not enjoying this. Let's get back to Illinois. But yeah, no.
Well, I've got a secret. I've got a secret about this trip.
Cool.
Is that I may have tapped into my contacts, and I was lucky enough to get press box seats for the games for all 3 games. Sorry, for the 2 games for Dallas, for Dallas at Chicago and Atlanta at Green Bay. But so I spent some time in the press box. So I got fed.
Yeah, it's great. They do feed you. I mean, we were doing an NFL podcast at the time, so we sort of blagged ourselves as like this British podcast, and then they put us in the press box, and you're like Michael Wilbon's there and you're just like
unbelievable. Michael Wilbon was at the Chicago game that I was at. Yeah. I was desperate to talk to him, but he had this entourage.
I thought if I talk to him, he's just going to look at someone, and I'm going to get hooked out of it. So like we're not going to do that. But I couldn't get around, like there's a detachment there from the journalists, which I guess they have to have for professional reasons.
Yeah.
But you watch the game in the press box and you go, God, I want to be out there.
And so that's what I did. I managed to, you can spot from the press box if there's a couple of seats that are not being taken and stuff like that. And then you go the I'm British type of thing, because these were Mary Lou and Barb's seats and have been and they're not there. So you just sort of go, "Do you mind awfully?" And, and they all go, "No, carry on, you're all right." And so because I wanted to, obviously, you want to hear the noise, you want to feel the atmosphere. I will say that I am a complete chicken, and it was as cold as it should be at Lambeau when I went. So I managed to stay out there for about half an hour, and then realised that I'd not quite brought the right coat, and decided to go back into the press box. But it was brilliant, utterly brilliant, and I was very lucky to do it. So you know, it's having the opportunity to get out there to see more. There's some of the stadia now because obviously they're new. Um, and have been either redeveloped or completely knocked down. And I don't know whether it's a sort of getting older thing, but the romanticism of wanting to have experienced some of the old stadiums
Mm.
that you sort of grew up watching. So whether it be the Superdome in Seattle, whether it be at Atlanta Fulton County Stadium or the baseball stadium at Milwaukee that the Green Bay used to play at, or the Astrodome. I would have loved to have gone to the
Yeah.
Astrodome in Houston and watched the Oilers and stuff. And maybe it's thoughts of that. They've started bringing back these throwback uniforms in the as you well, and I haven't seen a throwback uniform yet that isn't better than the ones that they currently have. I think I would love the Bucks to go back to the creamsicle, but I think they're all miles better than the shirts they've got now.
It seems I don't know. I'm not following NFL as much as as I used to. I've got two young kids, and they are they do not respect when they get ill, they don't respect the sanctity of Sunday night.
It's so inconsiderate of them as well. I don't understand.
Yeah, but I don't. I wonder whether they should make a sort of like weekend out of it, because sometimes you see, I remember seeing the Titans recently put the Oiler uniforms on, and they're amazing. But wouldn't it be great if they were going up against the Bucks creamsicles or like the old, well, yeah, but at the same time, and it sometimes just
At the
feels
same time,
like a
totally.
lost opportunity. But yeah,
But
we're just in danger of being, middle-aged men reminiscing about the past.
yeah, in danger, in danger.
Yeah, well, fair enough. It's largely what this podcast is, but we try and have a bit of a future look as well. So one of the things, when I asked you, and you were very gracious to say yes, you fired back immediately, and you go, "I've got two stadiums," which breaks my format and slightly breaks my heart, but we're going to go with it anyway. And you were like cricket. So I expected a cricket one, and you fired back that it was Old Trafford, the cricket, which and absolutely fine, and everyone, but it's not Grace Road where I saw you play. Actually, I went to uni in Leicester and had a season ticket in 2004, and that team that won the 2020 Cup, and that was a good summer. I very much enjoyed that. It's not Edgbaston where you won the 2020 Cup or made your first, first played with Warwickshire. It's Old Trafford. Why is that for you?
Similar type of affair to the NFL, really. It's where I grew up. I grew up in Bolton, and so automatically, and I'm still very much, even though I don't necessarily sound like one, I am a very proud Lancastrian. And when I was growing up, saw the Roses games used to be on ITV, and now and again I would be able to get the train or the bus to Manchester and watch cricket at Old Trafford because I got the cricket bug from relatively early, around about sort of 10, 11 years old, and just loved playing the game. So I would support Lancashire in the summer because that was I adored the game. Adored cricket. We had rugby league as well. We used to follow Wigan, but not avidly. I liked rugby league, and we went down to Central Park at numerous times, kind of thing. But it wasn't. I loved football more, but I loved cricket more than that. That was the thing. And Lancashire at the time were a successful side in that they were a successful one day side, but they had sort of superstars as well. the first real two superstars that I remember. Um, and I think prior to that, not no, I'm thinking. I mean, there was players like Neil Fairbrother was one, Graham Fowler, Paul Allott, Mike Watkinson, uh, and their overseas players, Patrick Patterson, the West Indian quip, who was just alarming. He was electric pace. But Wasim Akram,
Yeah.
who first signed there, and Wasim still remains. I still always get a bit of sort of hero worship, even though I work with him. And as you do with many of the people that you work with, actually, um, when you see them sort of in the box, and you just go, "Wow, yeah, I used to love watching you play," and now you're sat next to me talking cricket, and I know I can't believe it, but nor can you probably believe it that you have to put up with me sat next to you. But Wasim was one of the most exciting all rounders in the world when he signed for Lancashire. I seem to remember he got a 7-year contract. So that was my support of Lancashire, and one of the reasons why I loved Old Trafford. Remember the ground itself, the great pavilion that they used to have there,
Was that side on?
side on.
Yeah.
And so they used to have over on the far side of the ground near the Warwick Road station, they used to have these two light meters. The only ground in the country that used to have these light meters that were on the double tiered stand in the middle of them. And they were almost like these clocks, half clocks, and they were pointing at two different areas of the ground, the sensors. I didn't know this at the time. I just thought they were clocks that were really weird. Um, and they would tell you how good or bad the light were. They were the first sort of light meters at grounds. So they had the old drawstring scoreboard over near the ladies' stand, which if you're looking or let me say, if you're looking straight at the pavilion from the middle, it used to be on the left-hand side, and then there was another
Sorry.
scoreboard
I've got to stop you there,
on the
Charles.
right.
Ladies stand, as in like
Ladies' stand.
so, as in like segregation, or was that just a historic thing?
No, no, it was just sort of historic. I don't know. It was a ladies' stand. That's what they always
Fair
used to
enough.
call it, and it was on the left of the pavilions. The members would go on the right, and maybe historically it did have sort of segregation. I don't know,
Hmm.
but that's what it was always known as. So that was at the left of the pavilion, and then you had on at either end behind you had the press boxes and the executive boxes kind of thing, and then you had the side was the double tiered stand, and so I got to go and watch Lancashire sporadically, the odd day here and there. I remember watching Wasim bowl Yorkshire out on the last day of a Roses game as a kid, bowling round the wicket. And he was swinging the ball at will, and it was just a mesmeric piece of bowling. It was just, I was just glued. I had sort of situated myself as close to behind the bowler's arm as I possibly could be. Um, and the odd Sunday league game would go and watch, but my first, I got selected for an under 13 trial for Lancashire. And it was then they would play North versus South games. Basically, it wasn't the North of Lancashire versus South. It was just 24 lads who were good, and they played against each other. And it was played on Old Trafford's ground. And I was just sort of blown away that I was stepping onto the hallowed turf at 13 years old and playing this sort of trial game. And as it happened, I remember it. As it happened, I was quite a big 13-year-old, and I hit. We were bowled out for, I don't know, 100, but I was batting at 10 and hit 17. And I hit four of them in fours, and I was quite strong as well for my age. So I was pretty much the only one who was hitting boundaries. And then I got stumped trying to hit another one out of the ground, thinking at 13 years old I could launch it over the press box. And, and I remember getting an absolute rollicking from the coach when I sort of got stumped because the very next ball, number 11, got out. So yeah, and then bowling on that. But again, at such a tender age, playing on this enormous surface area because I was used to my local little cricket club, and then you're playing on a man-sized ground, if you like. That was how it felt. And so I played numerous times on it from in my formative years. They used to have tournaments there, under 13s, 14s, 15s, etc. Until I was sort of 19 years old. And then it kind of Lancashire broke my heart because I'd won the under 19 player of the year. I'd grown into a full size person, the sort of size. Well, I actually ended up the size I am now at 14. I just shot up, and so was kind of, uh, my bowling took precedence really, but I was still a sort of talented batter at the time, and I was proing in the leagues also at the time, and I'd won under 19 Player of the Year for Lancashire. And the names that went before you, the Michael Antons and John Crawleys and Nick Speaks and all of these players that had won, Gary Yates and people like that. So I was sort of half expecting, where's my contract? And they never signed me. I was absolutely devastated.
Yeah.
Devastated that Lancs didn't sign me. For what reason, I don't know. I see John Stanworth pretty regularly. He was the second team coach at Lancashire. And he very politely says to me that he said that you were one of the ones, or I was one of the ones that he got wrong. One of the players that sort of, um, and then, to which I respond, that may be the case at the time, but have you seen my career stats, John? So I don't think who coming through the same age, coming through the same time as a bowler as someone like Glenn Chappell, or who's got 1,000 first-class wickets and all of that. Anyway, he's very polite to say so. But I still got the fizz every time I went to Lancashire, and then subsequently. I remember broadcasting as a young broadcaster. I say young broadcaster, but I saw young in the sense of career wise. Would go for Radio Leicester to do the 2020 games at Old Trafford when the ground was still in its original format, and the atmosphere sensational as a broadcaster when you're calling ball by ball commentary on local radio. And then obviously they changed things around, they redeveloped it. And what I do love about Old Trafford is that they've tried to do it really sympathetically. They had to bring it up to date, they had to bring it into the modern age. Um, some people will always go, oh, well, but what they've created is this sort of bowl type affair with high with the temporary enormous temporary stand because it's got to be a multi-use stadium. They need to make money from it, and you've got to do that. So they have their concerts there and all of that sort of stuff, which I think is completely fine. I don't. You've got a facility, try and make some money out of it. I think so. You've got the enormous temporary stand on one side, and now what you've got is the hotel and the point on the other sides, and it keeps the noise in. It keeps the noise in at Old Trafford, and I think when you're now broadcasting from there, from the Statham end of the ground, um, you know, granted, they've got little windows that you can open. A lot of broadcast boxes don't. They are enclosed and you can't feel what's outside. Whereas at Old Trafford, they've just got these little windows, slatted windows that are across the top of the press box, across the top of the commentary box, which you can just open, which doesn't interfere with what you're trying to hear, but you can feel the crowd. And I adore broadcasting from there. It never fails to get me excited. I mean, I live down south now, so getting there is a bit of an annoyance because it's a bit further than it used to be when I lived in Leicestershire. But I think of all the grounds, I adore commentating from the Oval. I think that is another incredible ground. I love playing at the Oval. I love calling games from the Oval. Again, I adore that ground. I think I can genuinely take or leave commentating at Lords. I don't really get the same fizz. I made my first class debut, my county championship debut at Lords. It doesn't. To others, it does. To me, it doesn't. I don't get the same buzz of Lords that other people say is there. I don't like it. I like the slightly more raucous nature of the Oval and Edgbaston and Old Trafford. So yeah, but Old Trafford is the one that really sort of always will be really sort of cut me open, you'll have a red rose on my heart, and that's what it what it feels like to me when going back to Old Trafford.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely fair enough. I mean the economics of running cricket grounds are incredibly difficult. I think one of your old counties, Leicestershire, is trying a lot on the concerts and making it in trying to use that space more than just from April to September really. And I think they're trying that. I think some people will say that the redevelopment of Old Trafford isn't as sympathetic as some of the other places. I think maybe
Mm.
Trent Bridge is one that people cite as quite as done the same thing. But yeah, it is horses for courses, and there's what I will say for Lords is when you're sat there before play, there is that sort of little tingling, right? Whereas
Yeah.
Old Trafford builds throughout the day, whereas I almost feel like the best bit of Lords is the morning.
I totally agree. I think that is a completely fair comment. I think what Old Trafford battles with, similarly to somewhere like the Ageas Bowl, is that they are out of city grounds.
Yeah,
So you've got to make an effort to go there. So if you can then therefore um, make it attractive to businesses to hold their conferences there and for people to stay over and use the point as your conference facility, stay at the hotel at the same time and have it all encompassing and make it. And I think that's what Old Trafford would have struggled with other than that. Whereas a lot of grounds are much more centrally located and the access points are far greater. So Lancashire fans necessarily don't, because going to the cricket's not cheap. Going to, for a family of whatever, and I don't care if, it's cheaper than other sports, but, to take a family there and to take food and to take all that sort of stuff, any sporting fixture is not necessarily cheap. So what you'll usually find in T20 cricket, let's say, if Lancashire are playing, the crowds won't be necessarily great, but they will be great when it's the Roses match. They'll go to the Roses match kind of thing. So that's when you'll get 20,000 people there. Otherwise, you might get sort of 8 or 9 or something like that. And it's still pretty reasonable, but it doesn't have the same feel to the ground. Whereas Nottingham, because it's centrally located, it's easy access for public transport, for the trams, for the buses, and all of that. And you've got West Bridgeford just down the road and other areas of Nottingham where it's very easy to get to, for argument's sake. Similarly with Headingley. To a certain degree, Edgbaston, but Edgbaston's become sort of taking a life of its own now, and I love it. I love what they've done to it. I think they've really developed it well. But all of these, and the two London grounds, you have London. Everyone's near it. So I think you've got to. I think Old Trafford had to make a decision on how to do it, but also how to try and keep it with that feel of Lancashire County Cricket Club, but also make it a thriving business. Given the other aspects of kind of where it is. But no, Old Trafford will still, even though I still see Old Trafford in my mind, I still see bowling on there for Leicestershire and for Warwickshire, and I still see the ground 90 degrees the other way. But when we get to, and you always get the warmest welcome at Lancashire, always.
Yeah, and absolutely agree. They had to do something because the ECB were taking matches elsewhere, and if you don't have the test matches,
Yeah,
you're as a test match ground, you're pretty screwed. So
totally.
we haven't got a lot of time left, and and we've gone on a little bit of a tour, but it'd be silly of me not to take advantage of where you are now because you're over in India for the England Women versus India series.
Yep,
England Women won the T20 series, and they're
yep,
going to play a test match in a couple of days as we're
that's
speaking.
right.
And I noticed from your social media yesterday you were at one of the maidans in Mumbai. Um, they seem like the complete opposite of what we're talking about. These vast sort of English grounds with like conference facilities now. That feels like almost like pure cricket there.
It's it's an experience like no other coming to India. I'm lucky I've been here on numerous occasions. On this trip, it's the first one I've been since 2016 now, 2017, when it was the World Cup. My first experience was 2013 here in Mumbai, actually, for the Women's World Cup, or the 50 over World Cup in 2013. And having not known what to expect, it is a complete different, it's a complete culture shock, on a variety of different reasons. It is the most brilliant city, the most wonderful city, thriving, of course, there are every single walk of life here, and the amount of people, from the most poverty stricken, which is heartbreaking when you see, to the most famous Bollywood stars, that are living the high life. But when it comes down to cricket, that is the thing that connects everyone, in this country. And I when I've had the days off here, I mean, you obviously feel we did the first T20s at the Wankhede, and fabulous that because the women's game is still building here, even though they're sort of 4 or 5 years behind England and Australia. They're still building it, so they made it free. And you had to sort of log on to a website to sort of book your ticket, but it was free. And the place was packed, absolutely packed. It was heaving, which was brilliant to see for the women's game in this country, because it's taken a while for it to take off. They don't see necessarily women's sports in the same lights as they do perhaps in the UK and Australia, but they're catching on quick. They really are. And now they have sort of bought into it. Don't you worry. They'll be making it the best franchise competition in the world, the WPL. They'll be making sure it does become that. And so you've got this sort of cricket at the Wankhede, which I've seen, and at the Cricket Club of India, the Brabant Stadium, I've seen it there. First experience of me going to the D.Y. Patil Stadium in Navi Mumbai, which is north of here, about an hour or so. And that would be where the test match is being held. But then you walk around the city. When you've got days off, you walk around the city. And I adore just walking around, sensing the flavour of the sights and sounds and the smells. And it's all so very different within 10 yards of each other, seemingly. And just walking around and taking it all in. I wanted to go and see the train station yesterday, believe it or not. I'm such a geek. And I'm one of these people that loves certain things, but I'm completely clueless about architecture. I just know it's a bit like wine, okay? I like wine. I couldn't tell you what a good wine is. I couldn't taste this has got tones of blackcurrant, and I've no clues about that. I just know if I like it or if I don't like it. But I like wine. I like architecture. I couldn't tell you how it was done or what they were thinking, and nor do I actually have the inclination to learn. I just know that if I see a building, I like it, or don't like it. Anyway, I wanted to go and have a look at the train station, which is just a magnificent building. So I had a wander out. Always, I feel that anywhere is best served by going on foot. So as much as I could have got a taxi for like 70p to take me to where the gate went. I'd just go and walk, take it all in, and a little bit of exercise as well. And so I'm walking to the train station. I go down this street. And it just so happens that all of the businesses in India, I will get to the maidans in a second, all the buildings in India, or the businesses, are all lumped in one place. So if you want lampshades, you just go to Lampshade Street. And they're all on there. And every single business is dedicated to lampshades, okay? And it's sort of, as a foreigner coming in, you go, well, which one would I choose? How do I know which lampshade shop is the best? As it turns out, to get to the train station, I walked down Paper Street. So there is every shop dedicated to, if you want a pack of A4 printing paper, there are like 400 shops to choose from if you want this specific item. Anyway, makes me laugh. go to see the train station, walk around it, go inside the sort of organised chaos that it is, and it was just brilliant. I'm walking back towards the hotel, and I'm staying in a place called Nariman Point, which is on the other side of the bay to where the gateway is of India. And I'm drawn to the Maidan. This vast, long, thin strip of ground. And it is vast. From one end to the other, it'll take you, 15 minutes to walk it, easy. And it is quite narrow, and there's a walkway that goes bang in the middle of it. And every single, from sun up to sundown, there is cricket being played all over the show. Games of cricket on the side of the Maidan that people just in their civvies are dressed playing, or organised games of cricket, junior cricket, nets, T20, longer form games, and they all sort of overlap each other's ground. So I was walking through, I put a little bit on my social media yesterday. There was a game going on near the road, an organised game. They were wearing coloured clothes, they were using a white ball. There's no side screens, there's nothing like this. The ground in the outfield is bumpy and because it's used all the time, and there's very little rain in the area, so it gets bobbly and brutal. But the pitches are there. That's why they can play spin so well in this country, because they're playing on dry, dusty surfaces in their formative years, which turn naturally. And I'm seeing this game, and it just so happens that if you're on the walkway going through, on my left of the walkway was the game. On my right was long off and long on. They were two fielding positions either side of the walkway, and the ball's just speeding across the walkway from shots that are hit. So you've got to have your head on a swivel to make sure that you're not going to get cleaned up with a proper cricket ball. They weren't tennis balls, the proper cricket balls that are coming at you. But not just the game on the left, but the game on the right is doing exactly the same. So people are fielding, overlapping in games around the Maidan. This stretches out almost as far as the eye can see. And it is the passion for the game that they have, the opportunity to play on whatever is around. And it's the, whereas it's seen as not necessarily a niche sport in the UK, but it is. You think of the sports, where football rules all and then everyone else has to compete. Nothing beats cricket here. And to see from every demographic of life playing the game that I've loved for so long, it's sort of intoxicating. And you can't it's blooming hot, so I would find I just found a little bit of shade and just watched them play. And it's bang in the middle of the city, or not far from the middle of the city, this vast area. And how many cricketers throughout the years that we have seen that started their careers on the Maidans of Mumbai. There was another one I saw, actually, the Azad Maidan. The main one is the Oval Maidan. And there was near the Bombay Gymkhana, which is again just up the road. There's the Azad Maidan. I was watching some schools cricket there, and again it was just mesmeric. Really, you just get sucked in by the game and watching, and it's fascinating but thrilling to see this game played and played with such passion and everyone so excited. Sometimes I think they can go a little bit far, the Indian fans, on their sort of with players and treating them like demigods, but that's the nature of it. That's their superstars. That's their David Beckham's and how we do it in football, I suppose. So it's something that's got to be seen to be believed, that all of these games of cricket are being played, but it's something like nothing you'll ever see.
It's really interesting. We started at the beginning with the 7-year-old you being, thrilled by the vastness of and the complexity of the structure and getting you into sport, and then finishing on almost the opposite scale of the simplicity of people just playing on a strip of grass. And I think it touches on both. I think this is why I like this podcast, is that it can, and as you said yourself, a fantastic ground can be anything. It's all about connection, and it's about the feelings that it evokes in you. And it's been really great listening to you, Charles. And have a great time for the rest of your time in India. And I can only thank you enough for doing this.
Been great fun. Thanks so much for inviting me on.
Isn't Daggers brilliant? I mean, just listening to that again while editing that, I realised how little I spoke during that interview. You just give him a topic and off he goes and into some well thought out soliloquy on ground, their importance, and what a broadcaster. He can talk about NFL. He can talk about the maidans of India. He can talk about Burnley Football Club if he wanted to. So no, that was great. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I do. We'll be back next week. Have a great one.